Greetings from the United States. This is Dr. Joel Snyder, and my presentation is all about audio description, making visual images accessible to people who are blind. And I'm going to practice what I preach. I have a screen up in front of you, which is mostly text. How do you make text accessible to someone who can't see it? Well, you read it aloud. That's what I'm going to do. Audio Description Associates, LLC, the Visual Made Verbal, presents Audio Description, If Your Eyes Could Speak, with Joel Snyder, PhD, President, Audio Description Associates, LLC, and Director, Audio Description Project, ACB, or American Council of the Blind. Inclusion Discourse Series, September 2021. And at the bottom of the screen, American audio description symbol. And there is an image there, a white square within which are two letters in bold black type, an A and a D. The left side of that A is tilted just a bit toward the right, and to the right of the curve in the D, three curved lines, period. And why do I say that? Well, because I have found that sometimes beginning describers might go on. They might add something like, oh, they represent sound waves. Well, true enough. But you know, there's nothing there on the screen that says that for sighted people. Why would you include that information for people who are blind or have low vision? No, at best it's unnecessary. At worst, it could seem patronizing or condescending, as though you have to provide some extra information for someone who's blind. People who are blind, even congenitally blind, they grow up in the world. They know about curved lines and all kinds of things, everything the rest of us know. You know, we describe, we don't explain, we show, we don't tell. So that's a little bit about our audience that I think is important to remember when you're getting involved with audio description. What better way to begin a session on audio description than with description of a visual image? And this happens to be a cartoon or a comic, if you will. And comics play a role in the history of audio description. Won't get into all that right now, but I do have this cartoon up on the screen, and I bet some of you are leaning in because, golly, what does that caption say? Why didn't he enlarge the picture? Ah, well, there's method to my madness. I want to make the point that actually audio description can be helpful to people who are perfectly well sighted. Just the presenter forgot to enlarge the image, you know, or maybe you're standing in the back of the room and the screen is far away. Audio description will help you access that image. So let's begin. The Fan by John McPherson. On a stage, at left, a woman in a flowing gown, her hands clasped in front of her, stands before a kneeling man in a doublet and feathered cap. He croons, "Why does thy heart turn away from mine?" At right, a man at a microphone speaks. Basically, the guy with the goofy hat is ticked because this babe has been running around with the dude in the black tights. That caption reads, "Many opera companies now provide interpreters for the culturally impaired." Yeah. And you know, speaking of description for sighted people, you know, when I first saw this cartoon, I looked at that guy on the stage and I thought, what's that on his head? Is that an axe in his head or something? What's going on? Had I been listening to the audio description, it's just the feathered cap. Okay. Oh, and doublet. He's wearing a doublet. That's what that is. I learned something by listening to the audio description. This presentation is subtitled, "If Your Eyes Could Speak." And I stole that line from a movie. The Book Thief came out about 10 years ago. Wonderful film. It involves, in part, a man who's hidden in a basement of a home for his own good. The windows have been blacked out so no one can see inside, but of course he can't see outside. And in that home, there's a young girl, about 11 years old, who will go down and visit the young man occasionally. They talk about words and language. And this is what happens.
Tell me, where do you get these words?
It's a secret.
And who would I tell? Can you do me a favor? Can you describe the day for me? What's it like outside?
It's cloudy.
No. Make the words yours. If your eyes could speak, what would they say?
It's a pale day.
Pale. Good, go on.
Everything's stuck behind a cloud. And the sun doesn't look like the sun.
What does it look like?
Like a silver oyster.
Thank you. I saw that.
He closes his eyes and points to his head. I saw that. An 11-year-old providing an imaginative, creative, vivid description of the sun behind clouds. Audio description is a kind of literary art form. It's about words, really. It's a translation of the visual image to the verbal. Indeed, it's a kind of poetry, I think. In fact, I'll narrow that further. It's a haiku. And I say that because we use as few words as possible to translate the visual to the verbal, to create a verbal version of the visual. The visual is made verbal and oral, A-U-R-A-L, he points to his ear, and oral, O-R-A-L, he points to his mouth. We use words that are succinct, vivid, and imaginative to convey the visual image that's not fully accessible to a significant segment of the population. You know, here in the United States, the American Foundation for the Blind says there are over 30 million people who are either blind or have trouble seeing, even with correction. That's 8% of the population. And there's no reason why that doesn't hold true in other parts of the world, or perhaps it's an even higher proportion. Sure. And of course, the visual image, as I've already pointed out, is not fully realized by the rest of us as we live our lives. You know, the rest of us sighted folks who see but do not observe. It's useful for anyone who wants to truly notice and appreciate a more full perspective on the visual, but especially helpful for folks who are blind or have low vision. I have provided audio description at thousands of arts events, for videos, for movies, for television, broadcast television, for performance. It all began in the performing arts in 1981. I was there, for museum displays. But I've also provided description for weddings, parades, rodeos, circuses, sports events, and even funerals. Wherever the visual image is important to understanding and appreciating what's going on visually. But, you know, let me help you see what description is all about by asking you figuratively to close your eyes. You don't really have to close your eyes, no, because I'm going to close them for you, actually. Yeah, I'm going to play just a bit of the original soundtrack of a major motion picture, The Color of Paradise. But I want you to experience it as a totally blind person would. There'll be no picture, and you're just going to get the original soundtrack of this excerpt, no audio description. What can you glean about the film when you're limited to listening only? To experience the film in the movie theater as the blind person would have way back when, without description. Let's try it. Well, I'll tell you, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut even that excerpt short a little bit, because what was going on? Kind of hard to tell. If you're that blind person in the movie theater, you're probably out of there by that time, or you have fallen asleep, or you're doing your elbow to your colleague next to you. What's going on? What's going on? And disturbing everybody else in the movie theater. Kind of hard to follow. Well, let's experience the same excerpt again. But this time, I'll give you the full excerpt. You're all still blind, but we're going to add audio description that I wrote and voiced when this film was broadcast on national television here in the US about 20 years ago. I don't know, it was so hard to tell will it make a difference? Let's see by listening.
Muhammad kneels and taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Muhammad's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Muhammad curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip. Muhammad starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Muhammad tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Muhammad climbs. He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Muhammad stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark. He wraps his legs around the lower trunk, then uses his arms to pull himself higher. He rises into thicker foliage and holds onto tangles of smaller branches. Gaining his footing, Muhammad stands upright and cocks his head to one side. An adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Muhammad extends his open hand. He touches a branch and runs his fingers over wide green leaves. He pats his hand down the length of the branch. His fingers trace the smooth bark of the upper branches, search the network of connecting tree limbs, and discover their joints. Above his head, Muhammad's fingers find a dense mass of woven twigs, a bird's nest. Smiling, he removes the chick from his shirt pocket and drops it gently into the nest beside another fledgling. He rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Muhammad wiggles his finger like a worm and taps the chick's open beak. Smiling, he slowly lowers his hand.
Ah, a bit more clear, yes? Yes, I should hope. Now, but just from having listened closely to the description of Muhammad and his interaction with the tree, what do you know about Muhammad? What could you tell me about that character? Now, keep in mind, his visage, what he looks like, was already described earlier in the film. That's why you didn't hear too much of that. But think about how his interaction with the tree was described, for instance. I suspect that some of you will be surprised when you watch this segment. Yes, we're going to do it again, but I'm going to restore sight to everybody. I'm going to give you the image now with the original soundtrack, with the description, and I think in about 10 or 15 seconds, you're going to be surprised. Listen, consider the words used and why, and what images were chosen for description. Would you have singled out others? Description is oftentimes about what not to describe. Let's try it.
Muhammad kneels and taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Muhammad's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Mohammed curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip.
Mohammed is blind. He uses his hands.
Mohammed starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Mohammed tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Mohammed climbs. He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Mohammed stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark. He wraps his legs around the lower trunk, then uses his arms to pull himself higher. He rises into thicker foliage and holds onto tangles of smaller branches. Gaining his footing, Mohammed stands upright and cocks his head to one side. An adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Mohammed extends his open hand. He touches a branch and runs his fingers over wide green leaves. He pats his hand down the length of the branch. His fingers trace the smooth bark of the upper branches, search the network of connecting tree limbs, and discover their joints. Above his head, Mohammed's fingers find a dense mass of woven twigs, a bird's nest. Smiling, he removes the chick from his shirt pocket and drops it gently into the nest beside another fledgling. He rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Mohammed wiggles his finger like a worm and taps the chick's open beak. Smiling, he slowly lowers his hand.
And just briefly, I can share with you a copy of the script to audio description, which I've annotated with some points about why we describe the way we do. Right at the beginning, he taps his hands through thick ground cover of brown curled leaves. Well, brown curled leaves, it's fall. We don't tell you it's fall, we show you it's fall. And color has been shown to be important to people with low vision, even people who are congenitally blind. They know about color and the feelings that color can convey. A little later, there's a cue, just some gasping, chirping for 2 seconds, and then we come right in with the description because timing is critical in the crafting of description. We weave descriptive language around a film's sound elements. A little later, he curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He doesn't just grab it. He doesn't pick it up. No, he scoops it. Vivid verbs help conjure images in the mind's eye. A little later, he taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Mohammed tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Taps, tilts, tips. Sure, description, like poetry, is written to be heard. Alliteration adds variety and helps to maintain interest. Still later, an adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Well, yeah, what to include? There's so much going on. That image is important because the adult bird returns in the next scene. A little bit of foreshadowing, perhaps. And then at the end, he rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger, not his pinky, not his thumb. No, precision, specificity, precision creates images. And he wiggles that finger like a worm. Well, there's no worm there, but by using your imagination and invoking an image of a worm, you help people see what is there. He's wiggling his finger like a worm. Similes paint pictures. In closing, what it comes down to for me is there's no reason why a person with a physical disability must also be culturally disadvantaged. No, audio description brings culture more fully, more meaningfully to people who are blind or have low vision. And you know, in the United States, The principal constituency for audio description, folks who are blind, have an unemployment rate of 70%, 70. No, that's unacceptable. I think that with more meaningful access to culture and its resources, people become more informed, more engaged with society. They become more engaging individuals and perhaps more employable. Finally, I have my contact information on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me at jsnyder@audiodescribe.com. Visit the Audio Description Project of the American Council of the Blind, which I founded about 11 years ago, adp.acb.org. I wrote a book, The Visual Made Verbal, at amazon.com. And the Audio Description Project, we have trainings in audio description, a virtual one coming up in February, in person next July, hopefully in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you did not enjoy these few minutes with me, you can be certain you will not enjoy 3 full days with me, right? In any event, thank you for including me in this series, and I look forward to hearing from you via email. Bye-bye.
Thank you.